It's been a minute since I've done an opinion piece, and I figured I would sort of give an update on my feelings towards the PvP landscape. The short answer is that I cannot say I'm having a great time for reasons which may or may not be too surprising. But the long answer is that it's complicated, and I'll expand on why that is shortly. I've been playing a fair bit of PvP since the final shape came out, and thought it would be appropriate to mess around for a while and collect my thoughts instead of going off of first impressions during the honeymoon phase. The first thing that jumps out to me that's sapping the enjoyment levels out of PvP for me is the ammo system. If you are a regular of the channel, you'll know that I generally don't like special ammo, let alone too much of it. And you can recall that I grew to quickly enjoy the transmat special ammo system when I initially started playing D2 again. Now the transmat system is only present in trials, while the other playlist in Crucible use some strange 111 system, which in my opinion is very unenjoyable. I guess the simple way in which I can understand this system is that you spawn with one kill's worth of special ammo. If you kill a player with a primary weapon, it drops a brick on their corpse, and then there are occasional crate pickups around the maps. After playing with this system for some time, we are essentially back to the brain rot gameplay in Crucible, where players are just jousting at each other with special ammo over and over and over again. I just don't find that kind of gameplay healthy or enjoyable to engage with. It's brain rot. Hell, we've been through the dark timeline in Destiny 1 with crates and it didn't work out, so why are we trying to bother with it here in D2? Bungie states that the goal of crates is to promote movement and force conflict between opponents, but if anything, it incentivizes chaos and uncertainty while disrupting gameplay flow. A lot of special ammo crates are within walking distance from spawn points, anyways, especially the initial spawning points at the beginning of the game. So, more often than not, players are walking into the first engagement with more special off the rip than what we've seen with the transmat system. And the crate spawn timers are too inconsistent, so I don't see how this keeps gameplay flow optimal. On a side note, the burden of gameplay flow should not rest on the shoulders of the ammo system, but on the game modes themselves and the grand scheme of the sandbox. What's bothersome about this entire circumstance around the ammo systems is that Bungie laid out a solid foundation with the meter system, iterated on it once, and then discarded the system in favor of something objectively worse. The original Checkmate meter system was not perfect by any means, but it was a strong foundation to build upon. Instead of trying to iron out the system, they made one change, didn't get the desired results, and scrapped it, probably to never be seen again, unless it's in trials. All because of bad faith feedback that really just encompassed the whole rich get richer argument, which isn't a real argument because snowballing is the nature of Destiny's PvP. I'm not saying it's right, but in order to change the world, you gotta acknowledge what it is. Destiny's PvP landscape since D1 has just always been a snowball fest because because players get supers for getting kills. Are players not supposed to be rewarded for playing well? I mean, like I said, players that are performing well will charge their supers faster than those that are performing poorly. If folks are willing to die on this hill that the rich get richer, then by that logic, they should be against exotic weapons that get stronger after a kill, or perks that buff weapons on kills, as well as the entire concept of supers in PvP. I think it's unfair to apply this logic to one thing and then be okay with the aforementioned rewards to good play I just mentioned. Hell, if Bungie is so worried about good players snowballing with special ammo, with the meter system, they could have made a change to where going on a death streak with no defeats grants you more and more special meter progress until you get ammo. That way, players performing poorly are still going to be behind on special progress relative to the higher performers, but won't be rendered defenseless for 4 or 5 plus deaths to one hits, which isn't really happening. Unfortunately, I think there is no one right answer to the special ammo in PvP, but I think Transmat is the best way to go about it because it maintains the flow of the game and forces players to think about how to utilize their special ammo instead of what we have now where players can infinitely play special weapon trades and just joust at one another. The Transmat system makes players question their use of limited special ammo. I could use this one hit now to secure a kill, but if I do, I won't have it for when supers are up or when heavy or when an objective is in play. Bungie is all about players investing everything into a build or playstyle, but this 1-1-1 system is antithetical to that design philosophy. I think this current ammo system is so bad that I think I would rather only play Trials since it still uses Transmat. I mean, Trials has been the best PvP playlist in PvP for a while now, anyways. More on that later. All this to say, I hope Bungie reconsiders their decision for the current special system because I think this is really unenjoyable. The only type of player this system benefits are players that run into play special weapon trades, die, and then respawn and do it over and over again repeatedly. I would say another issue in the Crucible environment are the playlists and the structures around the playlist. The problem that the playlist brings is that it's fracturing the player population in multiple ways, which harms the quality of matchmaking times and connections. Not only that, but the Rotator 6v6 modes mostly consist of either Mayhem or some variant of Mayhem, and the Rotator 3v3 modes are just limited life modes that are boring to me personally. All I ask for is a casual 6v6 environment to mess around and try different playstyles or combinations. Besides, a new DLC just came out. I want to try the new things, and I rarely ever get an open skill 6v6 environment to do just that, let alone an open skill 6v6 environment with the normal sandbox. If I want to play the current sandbox of 6v6, I'm usually forced into normal control with SBMM and heavy team balancing, and we all really know how that goes. Normal control is actually the hardest playlist in the game for me relative to the other playlist. It's harder than both comp and trials. And it's interesting to think about the fact that Trials is now the most relaxing playlist in PvP. Matchmaking is open season. Every match is different. I rarely match the same people consecutively, let alone people I recognize all the time. As a playlist, Trials could not be in a better state. And the loot's good too. Competitive, on the other hand, is at the worst state that it's ever been. The modes are not enjoyable to play, and it uses the same garbage ammo system the rest of PvP does, minus Trials, of course. It's just a slog to play, and people treat it as such. Folks will play their 3 games a week for the ability to focus their roses and never touch it again. All I'm saying is that a lot of problems would be solved if the competitive playlist went back to the Forsaken formula used long ago. I'm not necessarily talking about the reward structure with pinnacle weapons, but the game modes in the map curated for those game modes. And especially the big fact, it was 4v4. So it was 4v4. There were 4 different game modes to play on, all with maps curated for those game modes. For example, you would never play Countdown on Endless Vale back in Forsaken. Trials really could truly be its own thing with 3v3, and comp could be separate from that. I think the reason that comp is 3v3 is because Trials exist, and that's garbage. And I don't know, man. A 3v3 clash on Widow's Court or Multiplex should be criminal. Like, that is a crime. Another big pain point of mine is the skill-based matchmaking on top of the horrid team balancing. I think Bungie needs to go back to the drawing board and take another approach as to how player skill is calculated or evaluated, as well as their lobby balancing mechanisms, because this is quite rough. The reason I say this is because player skill is treated as some static mathematical figure that cannot change and doesn't take into account the build a player may be using, whether or not they're having a good or bad day, that maps may not favor them, etc. Upon my return to PvP, I was allowed maybe 2 hours where every game was not a grand final of a tournament, but after that, I've just been in the trenches since I got trapped back on Skill Island. The team balancing in its current form puts way too much weight on the outlier of the lobby. So much so that I had to do an experiment on stream to prove to people that the game really does think I'm the hero. So the experiment I did was where I loaded in a control game without doing anything such as getting kills or having any impact on the match outcome, and I simply observed the outcome of the matches. To no one's surprise, every single match was a blowout. Some were mercies, others weren't, but it was clear that the game thinks I'm supposed to be the hero in 1v6, the enemy team, in order to not get mercied or get a blowout. Hell, loadouts and scores aside, I could literally see it in the movement differences between my teammates and that of the enemy teams. My teammates are walking around looking clueless, while my opponents are sliding every angle in unison. And these guys aren't even in a pre-made fire team. It just occurs to them when they know that they have the advantage and they know when to press an angle, while my teammates are just clueless. I thought the point of SBMM was that the lobbies are supposed to be, I guess, more even, but with how this is right now, my teammates only get weaker while my opponents are stronger. And this effect is amplified the more well I play, I guess, or the better I play, the more this effect of the algorithm is amplified. And speaking of the algorithm, it does not really like that I play well, so it forces a loss down my throat. If I defy the odds of the algorithm, then my account will just catch a restriction like it did during the week of hardware supremacy. With this new snake draft system, there are just so many blowouts either in my favor or not, and it just harms the quality of PvP. On top of the fact that the map rotation is horrid, if I'm going to get lobby balanced into the dirt, can I at least play on a good map? Some of these maps are instant backouts no matter what, while most of the maps are just mid-tier, and the enjoyment depends on the quality of the lobby. An example would be Bannerfall or Cyrus Plaza. But the point is that I'm forced to suffer on mostly unenjoyable maps, while the game ends in a mercy when I queue into a map I do enjoy, such as Javelin 4 or Endless Vale. As for the Sandbox, I'm enjoying it. Besides several obvious outliers such as Speaker's Helm, Kvostov, Red Death, and Prismatic Hunter, I don't have many bad things to say about the Sandbox as a whole. Multiple weapon archetypes are viable and competitive. Of course, there will always be the strongest options, but at least the strongest meta picks aren't so ahead of everything else it renders other weapon types worthless. Prismatic Hunter, in my opinion, is over the top. The reason I say this is because Prismatic Hunter got the best part of all the Hunter kits on one class, on top of the fact that Storm's Edge is the best super in the game in PvP, in my opinion. That super is an instant win button, and there's no way you're not getting kills with it. It got poison smokes from Destiny 1. It's got the most ideal grenades such as Dustfield or Swarm Nades. Hell, even Grapple if you want to build into the movement. It even got Threaded Spectre. It's no wonder that you would consistently see at least 2 Prismatic Hunters per team in trials because it's so loaded on top of in regards to the kit that it has. To tie this all back together from the beginning, the reason I stated that my outlook on PvP is complicated and more on the side of unenjoyable is because I really like where the Sandbox is at in terms of weapon and ability variety, minus the mentioned outliers. Still, what's hemorrhaging my enjoyment are the playlists, SBMM, and team balancing mechanisms, as well as the awful map rotation. This game still has its core issues that bother me in regards to PvP, but there is no point in beating a dead horse. I think Bungie won over the graces of the PvP players and started slacking again in terms of updates and just leaving the Crucible environment in a less than ideal state. The conundrum with PvP not getting enough support is because Bungie doesn't really believe in it. Of course, PvP won't succeed if it's not in a place to be receptive to get attention or care. One last thing I think is harder to quantify is that PvP has had this problem for years now where the gameplay is not rewarding or fun to the common gamer. That's why I said it's harder to quantify, because reward and fun varies player to player, which is why I think it's hard. I don't know if Bungie can really tackle this, as PvP will always be seen by most players, especially PvE players, as something that shouldn't have existed in Destiny, and in their minds, it takes development sources away from the part of the game they like playing, such as PvE. For players like me, PvP is why I indulge in PvE, otherwise many players, myself included, would not be playing Destiny. Because without PvP, PvE has no meaning, because what am I going to do? Shoot dregs with the new power weapons that I have? Like, come on. I know I kind of went off on a tangent, but that's really all I got to say for the video. I'm not quitting or anything, just giving an update on my feelings of the PvP experience since my return in April. If you made it to the end, thanks for watching, and let me know what you think, and I will interact with it whenever I can. Peace out.